Throughout history, people have gone missing without explanation, some of whom are never seen again. While some of these cases have plausible explanations, others are more inexplicable, as they've offered up no clues or witnesses and they remain unsolved decades later. Whenever a person goes missing, the police usually look at friends and family members first to see if they were involved somehow. In many of these cases, there was a dispute or argument that led up to the disappearance, and any clues from those interactions could be vital to locating them. The disappearance of 40-year-old Amber Manthorne took place on the 7th of July 2022, and at first, investigators were baffled and asked for the public's assistance in the case. But it's since come to light that someone close to her may have been responsible. Amber hails from Port Alberni, Vancouver Island, one of the country's largest islands. Her older sister Shannon describes her as a fun-loving and spirited person who kept everyone on their toes when she was a child. She added that Amber was someone who worked hard, made sure to look after herself, and who had a lot to look forward to in her life, since she decided to possibly get married and have children one day, something that did not appeal to her in the past. She was well known and liked in her community, and her family states that people still come up to them in the streets, often to ask if there's been any developments in her case, despite it being more than 2 years old. It's unclear who reported Amber missing, but sources state that this was done on the 8th of July 2022, after she'd not been seen or heard from for more than 24 hours. That's when the Royal Canadian Mounted Police made an appeal to the public to be on the lookout for her while they started their investigation. The following day, her family became even more concerned for her well-being when her car, a white 2021 Jeep Compass, was found abandoned just south of Nanaimo, and the case was handed over to the Vancouver Island Integrated Major Crime Unit. Following this, Amber's family, friends, and volunteers from the community started a search in the backcountry areas between Port Alberni and Nanaimo, where her Jeep was found. The search lasted for weeks, but no further clues were found. During interviews with those close to her, it was revealed that Amber was likely in the company of her boyfriend, Justin Hall, and that he was likely the last one to see her before she vanished. But when investigators spoke to him, he stated that he hadn't seen her that day, and that he had no idea what may have happened to her. Unfortunately, Justin passed away shortly before the 1-year anniversary of Amber's disappearance, though it's not been revealed how he lost his life. This means that any information he may have had on the case is now forever lost. Investigators have since asked that anyone who was close to Justin and who may have information on the case come forward, since he's now considered to be the #1 suspect in her disappearance. Thanks to further leads that were uncovered during the investigation, which includes some very suspicious activity that was captured by CCTV security cameras. The footage was obtained from a Husky gas station on 3rd Avenue and has since been released to the public in case they have more information on what is seen in the video. It shows Amber's Jeep arriving at the gas station, but when the driver steps out, it's Justin, not Amber. He's then seen opening the driver's side back door and removing a large blue suitcase from the back seat. He takes it to the back of the car, opens the trunk, and attempts to put it in the trunk. But as is seen in the footage, he's unable to fit it due to a large plastic tote that's already in the trunk. And after many unsuccessful attempts, he's forced to return the suitcase to the back seat. Neither the plastic tote nor the suitcase have ever been found, and it's unclear whether they'll shed light on anything in the case. But investigators feel strongly that they will. They believe there is foul play involved, and that Justin knew what had happened to her. They've since released a timeline in the case starting on the 7th of July, when Amber was captured on security footage at 3:27 p.m. inside of a Buy Low Foods in Port Alberni. She made a few purchases at the store and was then seen leaving in her car. Her Jeep was seen again driving west on Pacific Rim Highway at 3:35 p.m. and shortly after she arrived at her house, and she's never seen again. The next day, at 12:22 a.m., Justin made a call to United Cabs where he ordered a taxi. The cab was seen heading in a westerly direction. Keep in mind this was just after midnight. About 4 hours later, at 4:17 a.m., Amber's car is seen driving on the Pacific Rim Highway, headed in the direction of Port Alberni. Following this, he traveled to the gas station, where he was seen trying to rearrange the luggage that he had in the vehicle. The Jeep is then seen once again at a McDonald's restaurant on Johnston Road, where Justin buys some food at 7:02 a.m. An hour later, Amber's colleagues realized that she didn't show up for work, and at 9:22 a.m., Justin was seen buying items at a Walmart in Nanaimo. This was about 4.5 hours after he was captured by cameras at the gas station. His suspicious behavior continued after this, as he was clearly planning on traveling to the mainland in Amber's Jeep without informing anyone. It's known that he purchased a ferry ticket at the Duke Point terminal, after which he fell in behind the other cars that were waiting to be loaded. But then he seemingly had second thoughts, as he could be seen leaving the queue just after 11 a.m., never getting on the ferry and driving away. The next day, investigators were informed that the Jeep had been found, but that Amber was nowhere to be seen. Searches were conducted in the areas surrounding the car, but nothing further was found. Investigators stated that they believe Amber owned a phone case that held several bank and credit cards, and have asked the public to be on the lookout for it, since it was never found. Justin's cell phone was also never recovered. Strangely, Amber's phone pinged off several towers in the Albany Valley area for days after she disappeared, and it may be a vital clue in the case. The authorities have since revealed that they believe Amber is no longer alive, and that she likely met with foul play, possibly at the hands of her boyfriend, but since he can't be interviewed, this remains speculation. Investigators have asked that anyone with information on the case contact the Port Alberni RCMP at 250-723-2424, quoting police file number 2022-6674. Alternatively, you can contact Crime Stoppers at 1-800-222-8477. Some missing person investigations turn cold for decades before a new lead is found, which is the case in the disappearance of Alex Sloley, who went missing on the 2nd of August 2008, mere days before he was supposed to celebrate his 17th birthday. At the time, Alex, who's known to his friends as Gog, was living in Islington, London, while studying math and accountancy at City and Islington College, and by all accounts was considered to be a very intelligent person. He was known to take care of his appearance and was always dressed nice. When he went missing, his parents had gotten separated and he was one of 4 siblings, the other 3 being sisters, Tasha, Tazra, and Latina. Just before he vanished, Alex had been staying with one of his friends in Edmonton, North London, but he set out for home at around 12 in the afternoon on the 2nd of August to start preparations for his birthday. He never made it home, and his family became concerned that something untoward may have happened to him. They knew that he didn't have any money on him, and that he didn't even have a change of clothes, though he did have his cell phone with him. But soon after he was reported missing, the phone either ran out of battery or was turned off, and hence couldn't be tracked. His family told investigators that it was very out of character for Alex to remain out of touch for an extended period of time, and that he didn't have any reason to run away from home. CCTV footage of the area was scoured through by investigators, but he wasn't picked up by any cameras either in Islington or Edmonton. No one had seen him, and his family stated that it was as if he simply vanished into thin air without explanation. In 2009, a member of the public contacted investigators to report that they had seen Alex in Ilford, but this lead was followed up on and nothing further came of it. Alex's photo was then added to milk cartons thanks to the Missing People charity and the Iceland supermarket chain. But despite his image appearing on more than 13 million of these cartons, he remained missing. His family has since criticized the police for the manner in which Alex's disappearance was investigated. In 2015, his mother Narissa learned that there had been several reports of Alex being sighted in 2009, but she was never informed of this. Strangely, more than 16 years after he went missing, one of Alex's friends came forward in 2024 to reveal that he'd been involved in the selling of illegal substances at a low level. And this suggests that he may have gotten involved with some dangerous people or gangs, and that this may have resulted in his life being ended. But his family has refuted these claims. The friend with whom Alex had been staying in North London has since stated that he's noticed discrepancies between reports of his last movements and what actually happened on the day that he disappeared. He states that Alex was actually somewhere else in London after leaving his house, and that he had not traveled back to his house yet. He's also revealed that he and Alex had been selling illegal substances for some time, since it was one of the few ways they had to make money. He added that they used to sell the substances in the Ilford and Barking areas. This was confirmed by another of his friends, who added that Alex was always looking to make some cash, on one occasion getting paid nearly $2,000 from a den called the Base. According to this friend and a few others, this is where Alex had traveled to after leaving North London, and he's never been seen or heard from since. But Nerissa stated that Alex has never been involved with these types of people, and that if he'd made money selling these substances, he would have had money for expensive clothes, which he never did. But investigators say that they tend to believe Alex's friend's version of events, since the case has followed the same narrative as many others, where people became involved with the wrong types of people, only to end up going missing or worse. They made reference to county lines, which they describe as a ruthless organization that employs people to smuggle illegal substances from one particular area to another. They added that the members of this group demand loyalty, and that if they're crossed, they wouldn't think twice about ending someone's life. But for the time being, Alex's disappearance is still being investigated as a missing person case, as many people feel he simply chose to disappear to start a new life somewhere else. One detective who's working on the case has stated that he's hopeful that Alex is still alive somewhere, and that he's simply chosen to stay out of touch with his friends and family. He believes there is a possibility that he's chosen to not use his bank accounts or cell phone for this very reason. But until further clues are found, there's no way of knowing whether this is the case. Alex's father has since passed away without ever finding out what happened to his son, and his sister Latina has stated that she remains hopeful that he is still alive, and that he'll simply walk back into the family's home one day, as unlikely as that may be. 16 years have now passed since Alex went missing, and an age progression photo has been made available to the public to show what he would look like now in case he is spotted. No further leads have ever been received in Alex's case, and investigators have asked that anyone who sees him, or who has information on where he may be, come forward by contacting the police. It's often the case when someone goes missing that family members and friends become frustrated with the progress of the investigation. This is usually because no new clues have been found, or because the authorities are waiting for evidence to be processed. This can be a very frustrating time for everyone involved, since investigators want to close the case for good, and the missing person's family wants their loved one to be found. But sometimes, no matter how much evidence is found, the case goes cold and is never solved. The disappearance of 44-year-old Mark Murensak is one such case that seemingly stalled, and 18 years later, there's been very little progress. His sister Valeria has repeatedly voiced her frustration in this regard, stating that the detectives who are investigating the case have failed to communicate with her regularly. But the authorities have stated that they haven't updated Valeria because there have been no new developments in the case, despite their ongoing investigation, and the addition of a $5,000 reward to anyone who comes forward with information leading to Mark being found, or the case being solved. Mark's disappearance took place on the 30th of September, 2006, and his case contains some very baffling and confusing elements. During that time, he was working as a stock handler at a Walmart in Slippery Rock Township in Lawrence County, Pennsylvania. For 18 years prior to that, he'd been working for the U.S. Postal Service, but one day he simply decided to resign without giving any reason. He was described by his fellow employees at the post office as a hard worker, and for months after he disappeared, Valeria would receive calls from other post offices who wanted to employ him, thanks to his good employee record. 5 months prior to his disappearance, he'd been living with Valeria in Slippery Rock. Their father had passed away, and the two siblings, who were 10 years apart in age, decided to move into his house together. The night before his disappearance, Mark asked Valeria to wake him up at 8 a.m. after arriving home from work at around 11:15 p.m., presumably so that he could get ready to go to work for an early shift. She agreed but never got the chance to do this, as she was woken up at 6 a.m. and received some alarming news. State troopers had knocked on her door to inform her that they'd found a truck, believed to be Mark's, abandoned on a bridge in Taylor Township, specifically on the Route 422 bypass. When the truck was searched, the keys were found to still be in the ignition, and it was eventually confirmed that the truck did indeed belong to her brother. Startled by this news and believing that his truck may have been stolen and then abandoned, Valeria went to Mark's room and found that he wasn't there. The area around the truck was thoroughly searched, but no sign of Mark was found, and there were no clues as to where he may have gone. In the days that followed, more searches were conducted, with the help of more than 40 firefighters, state police officers, and volunteers. Helicopters were brought in to search from the air, and search dogs attempted to find Mark's scent, but with no result. It was speculated that Mark decided to end his own life and jumped over the bridge, but investigators stated that they had no proof that this was what happened and decided to keep searching. But they did note that Shenango River, which flows under the bridge, was swollen at the time, resulting in very strong and dangerous currents that could sweep anyone away if they were unfortunate enough to end up in the water. When this avenue of the investigation failed to produce any result, Valeria decided to search for him in the surrounding homeless camps, thinking that he may have decided to vanish of his own accord, but again, no sign of Mark was found. She also got in contact with dam operators in and around Pittsburgh to inform them that her brother may have ended up in the river and that they should keep a lookout for him. This also didn't lead anywhere, and before long, Mark's case went cold. Some people have suggested that Mark may have been feeling depressed following his father's passing, and that he decided to end his own life as a result. But since nothing was ever found in the water, this theory remains speculative. This is when Valeria started to get frustrated with the investigation. She stated that the searches were abruptly stopped, and no one returned to help her look for Mark, causing her to become even more despondent. Furthermore, none of the investigators ever contacted her to update her on the progress, and she felt that Mark's case had been shelved and forgotten, leaving her as the only one still looking for him. Furthermore, she stated that she was unable to get any answers when she inquired why the searches had been called off. When she and a reporter contacted investigators on the same day to ask about the progress in the case, a sergeant who was not involved in the investigation stated that they felt they were being harassed and could offer no further information. It became clear that Mark's case had gone cold, and nothing more could be done without additional clues, though investigators assured Valeria that all missing person cases would remain open until the missing person is either found or declared deceased, and they would continue to follow up on any new leads that are received. Then, in July of 2024, Valeria learned that a Facebook page called PSP Tips, an affiliate of the Pennsylvania State Police, posted a photo of Mark, along with the news that a $5,000 reward is being offered for information leading to him being found. This took her by surprise, as no one had spoken to her about the case for a long time, and she contacted the police, who told her that this was being done in an effort to drum up new leads, something that's often done during cold case investigations, in case it jogs someone's memory. In November of 2023, skeletal remains were found in a wooded area in Pulaski Township, and they were sent for testing, but investigators told Valeria that they likely belonged to a man who'd gone missing in Ohio, and were almost certainly not linked to Mark's disappearance. Mark remains missing today, and it seems that his case may never be solved. Valeria and investigators are still hopeful that they will find new evidence one day, and that the case will move forward. But sadly, for the time being, nothing more can be done. Valeria stated that when Mark went to bed that night, he was wearing jeans, a gray t-shirt, and a navy sweatshirt as he did every night, and he was likely still dressed this way when he left the house. Mark would currently be 62 years old and is described as having brown hair with hazel eyes, standing 6 foot 6 inches tall and weighing 200 pounds. His NamUs case number is MP55661. The disappearance of 43-year-old Anna Maciejewska from Malvern, Pennsylvania, was at first thought to be a routine missing person investigation. But a year after she vanished, it was upgraded to a homicide investigation when some disturbing information came to light. Anna originally hails from Poland, and a few weeks before she vanished, she'd been planning to go back there for a visit, since her father's 80th birthday was coming up. She'd been in steady contact with her family while working as an actuary in the US. She had a 4-year-old son, and according to her coworkers, was diligent in her duties and got along well with everyone. She immigrated to the United States in 1997, after which she started studying at the University of Louisville in Kentucky. She had already attained 2 bachelor's degrees from Warsaw University, but furthered her education in the US as she wanted to obtain a master's degree in mathematics. She soon found a job with Avoya Financial, known then as ING, and following this, her relationship with her boyfriend, who'd come to the US with her, ended. On one occasion, she decided to go on a ski trip where she would meet Alan Gould, the man who she would eventually marry. Their relationship was doing well until 2016, when she unfortunately had a miscarriage, an event that understandably had an adverse effect on her mental state. The couple's relationship started to deteriorate, with Anna feeling that Alan wasn't being supportive. He was spending a lot of time looking after their son, for whom Anna was trying to get a Polish passport, so that he could get to know her parents when they visited them in their home country. This caused further trouble in the relationship, since Alan didn't want their son to become a dual citizen, and after a while she resorted to attending support groups where she could speak openly about her problems and the issues in her marriage. This is something that her friends and family would only be made aware of later. On the 28th of March, 2017, Anna had a conversation with her mother on the phone, in which she stated that she wanted to fly home to surprise her father for his birthday, along with Alan and their son. She seemed very excited about the trip, and stated that she would let her mother know all the details once they had been arranged. But strangely, on the 29th of March, she sent a text message to her mother that simply read, "Sorry, I can't come. Kisses, Anna." The message was sent in Polish. Then, on the 30th, Anna's father received a text from her number, wishing him a happy birthday. But the message seemed suspicious, since it was written in badly worded Polish, a mistake that Anna would never have made since she was fluent in her native tongue. Her parents immediately started suspecting that the message was typed by someone pretending to be Anna, and they immediately tried to call her but got no answer. Over the next few days, they tried in vain to contact her, and they started to worry that something had happened to her. They managed to contact Alan, who then told them that Anna wasn't feeling well, but he promised to have her call them when she was feeling better. Anna's manager told investigators that he received a text message from her on the 3rd of April in which she informed him that she would not be coming to work that week. But this message also raised suspicion, since he and Anna's coworkers knew she would have called under normal circumstances, rather than send a text. The week passed by, and she was expected to be back at work on the 10th of April, but didn't show. Alan then claimed that she'd recovered and she was ready to go back to work, but that she had run out of their house that morning in a state of panic. He assumed that she was late for work, but was then told that she never arrived for her shift. Anna's manager started to suspect something was wrong, and he contacted the police, who traveled to the couple's house to perform a welfare check, but no one was home. When she didn't arrive for work again the next day, her manager, not Alan, reported her as missing. Alan did open a missing person case the next day, after calling Anna's parents and telling them that she had gone to work the previous morning and never come home. When asked why he waited so long, he stated that he was waiting to see if she came back. When the house was searched, Anna's phone, passport, and wallet were found, something that her friends found very strange, since she usually had these items with her. A Facebook page was created to raise awareness about her disappearance. When Alan found out about this, he became upset and stated that he wanted nothing to do with the social media campaigns, adding even more suspicion. Unfortunately, the page didn't result in any leads. On the 8th of May, Anna's car, a blue 2011 Audi A4, was found abandoned in the most unlikely of areas, the parking lot of a hiking trail in a private community called Charlestown Meadows Development. The car had been backed into the parking space, something that Anna's friends stated that she would never do. The car was searched, as were the areas surrounding it, but nothing was found. The trail was then also searched, but with the same result, despite the assistance of volunteers from the community. Alan aided in the search, but then stopped cooperating with the police. Investigators learned that Anna had a second house that she and Alan used for storage, and in 2019, a search warrant was issued for it to be searched. It wasn't revealed what was found in the house, but as soon as the search was completed, investigators revealed that the case had been upgraded to a homicide investigation, and that Alan was a person of interest. Investigators revealed that they had proof that Alan was being less than truthful about what he knew, since he had information that could progress the case but refused to cooperate. He also refused to speak to any of her friends, colleagues, or reporters, and is not given a reason as to why. Anna's disappearance has had an adverse effect on her parents' health, but they remain hopeful that she is still alive and will eventually be found. A $30,000 reward is being offered to anyone who comes forward with information, leading to Anna's case being solved. Anna is described as having brown shoulder-length hair and hazel eyes, standing 5 foot 4 inches tall and weighing 160 pounds. Unfortunately, it isn't known what she was wearing at the time that she went missing, but is known to wear an engagement ring and a wedding band. If you or anyone you know has information on this case, you're asked to contact the Pennsylvania State Police at 610-486-6280. Anna's nameless case number is MP38570. Before she disappeared in April of 2024, 61-year-old Cristina Ase was working as a nurse at the Rosie Lynn Care Center in West Lynn, Oregon. Her co-workers have taken it upon themselves to find as much information on her case as possible, since they consider her to be like a family member, and it's clear that she was liked by those close to her. They describe her as a kind person who never uttered a bad word about anyone, and given the profession that she chose to follow, it's obvious she cared about others, especially people who could no longer care for themselves. Cristina moved to the US from Argentina in the mid-2000s. She'd found living in Argentina hard and hoped to find a better, more comfortable life in the US. She was certain that she wouldn't struggle to find work, since she'd already worked as a biochemist in the past. But when she arrived in the US, she couldn't speak English and found a job as a cook at a care facility. When her employers noticed that she was a good worker, they offered her a promotion, and she started organizing patients' medical records. But she was far from content with this job, and in the meantime kept studying, eventually earning her qualification as a registered nurse and a Bachelor of Science in Nursing. Shortly after that, she attained a degree as a Doctor of Medical Science. Those who worked with Cristina told investigators that she used to treat her patients as if they were her family, often going far and above the call of duty to help them. Her disappearance has affected many people, including her patients, co-workers, family, and the surrounding community. On the 25th of March, the day before she disappeared, Cristina arrived at work as usual. She had a cup of coffee and sat down with some of her colleagues for lunch, reminding them that they had a training day the next day, which she was excited to attend. But the next morning, at 6:34 a.m., she texted a colleague to say that she would be an hour late for her shift, and would be arriving at 8:30 a.m. but didn't say why. Two of her closest coworkers, Amy and Nicole, the colleague's daughters, found this strange, since Cristina would usually text all three of them at the same time, but hadn't done so on this occasion. Both Amy and Nicole started to worry when Cristina still hadn't arrived for work more than 2 hours late. They felt that something was wrong, so they tried to contact her by calling and texting but got no replies. They then reported her absence to their boss, who decided to call Cristina's husband, since he was listed on her employee form as her emergency contact. He was as surprised as they were to learn that Cristina had planned to go to work late, and it had now become clear that something sinister was going on. Having not heard from her either, her husband contacted the police and reported Cristina as missing. She's not been in contact with anyone, and given the fact that she used to speak to her sisters on the phone every day, this is a major cause for concern. Her sisters and husband have stated that they will not be speaking to reporters about the case, since it's an ongoing investigation, but they have thanked her friends and family for spreading awareness about her disappearance. This is being done through flyers that have been put up in the surrounding areas, and via searches that have been conducted. At one stage, they used boats to search nearby bodies of water, but nothing was found. Amy decided to spread even more awareness by posting Cristina's details on a billboard, but was told by the Lamar Advertising Company that it would cost about $13,000, which they couldn't afford. But she was delighted when the company contacted her to say that they would be providing 7 billboards free of charge. A Facebook group has since been created with details on the case, and a plea for anyone who knows what happened to Cristina to come forward. Then there was a break in the case. Investigators learned that Cristina was seen in a southeast Portland neighborhood on the day that she went missing, and she spent more than 3 hours there, but it isn't known why. But this wasn't the first time that she had traveled there. A search warrant was issued to analyze data on Cristina's phone, and it showed that she left her apartment that morning at 6:34 a.m., the same time that she messaged her colleague. She then drove to Portland via Interstate 205 and at 6:47 took the Southeast Foster Road exit and traveled to a residential neighborhood near Glenwood Park, where she remained for about 3 hours. According to her cell phone data, she went to more than one house while there, but no one had any idea what she was doing in that area. Amy stated that it isn't an area that Cristina would normally visit, and that her presence there that day is baffling. Then, at 10 a.m., she drove to the intersection of Southeast Flavel and 92nd Avenue, where she remained for about 5 minutes before her phone either ran out of battery or was turned off. But Cristina had been to this same area at least 3 times before, and on each of those occasions, she texted her employer exactly 20 minutes after leaving home. This was an important factor in the case, since the exit to Southeast Foster Road is a 20-minute drive from her apartment. Each time that she traveled to Glenmore Park, she texted her employer to say that she would be late for her shift, while her husband was under the impression that she'd simply gone to work. A short while after these details came to light, Cristina's car was found parked at her apartment building in Portland, but no one knew how it ended up back there. The police were called and the vehicle was searched, resulting in another clue being found. It was discovered that the entire interior of the car had been cleaned using chemical cleaning products that had left a residue on all the surfaces. This has caused her husband and coworkers to believe that she was the victim of foul play, since this is the only explanation for why the car was so thoroughly cleaned and then returned to her apartment for her husband to find. Taking all of the clues that have been found into account, investigators believe Cristina was involved in either a crime or a serious medical emergency, but what these may be remains a mystery. She remains missing today, but her husband, colleagues, and family have stated that they will all continue searching for her and spreading awareness about her case until they find the answers they're looking for. Cristina is described as having grayish-brown hair, weighing around 150 pounds and standing 5 foot 8 inches tall. She may have had a black purse with her when she disappeared, but it isn't known what she was wearing at the time. Anyone with information on the case is urged to contact the Vancouver Police Department at 360-487-7500 or Crime Stoppers of Oregon at 503-823-4357. It was the 30th of June in 2015, a normal summer day in El Reno, Oklahoma. Ida Joanne Beard, a Native American woman of the Cheyenne and Arapaho tribes, left her visually impaired mother, Rebecca's house, and told her that she'd be going just down the road to visit some friends. It was just a short walk to her friend's house. That evening, she left and headed back home, but she never made it there. That normal summer day quickly took a haunting turn. Neighbors had last spotted her heading down that road with nothing out of the ordinary, according to them. But then the 29-year-old mother of 4 vanished into thin air. Ida didn't return home that day. On the day Rebecca realized that her daughter was missing, she headed over to the police department. There, she was told by officers that it isn't a crime for someone to leave town if they want to. They assured her that she would return, but it's been 9 years with still no sign of the missing woman. The El Reno police didn't start investigating the disappearance until 2 weeks later, a time frame that could have been absolutely crucial, and any clues or critical evidence by this time was gone. According to the department, they officially opened a case for Ida on the 15th of July that year, but during that 2-week window when the police were doing nothing, family and friends prompted their own investigation. They headed out to that same road and began asking neighbors if they'd seen Ida, but no one had. She was gone. It wasn't until years later that the police actually interviewed family and friends relating to the missing person case, but by this time they were already too late. Ida Beard was described as a helper, a woman who loved volunteering at her Sunday school. If anyone needed help preparing the fellowship dinner, she would be there. Lorinda Morgan described her as someone who always wanted to pitch in. Loved ones recall her as always wearing her hair in a French braid and a smile on her face. She also had the habit of rolling up her pant legs. She would never venture too far from her El Reno home. Following the mishandling of Ida's disappearance, Morgan pushed for legislation in Oklahoma and succeeded in establishing a division of the police that creates a database to track the indigenous people's disappearances, while also providing guidance to the families. Any information about Ida can be directed to the BIA at 833-560-2065 or the El Reno Police Department at 405-262-6941 with the case number 2015-1474. Shacaiah Harding enjoyed singing and dancing, which she would often spontaneously do in public. This would grab the attention of onlookers, but she didn't really care. One day, though, those free-spirited acts vanished from the streets of Montana. In 2018, Shacaiah, who's known mostly by her middle name, Blue, was overcoming some issues. She'd previously been bouncing around from place to place, but would always remain in contact with family. It was this year, though, that she started to settle down. The 19-year-old opted to live by herself but remained close to her immediate family and extended family, a norm in her Native American culture. In June of that year, she headed over to her older brother Michael's house and dropped off a birthday present for him. Dropping in at her brother's residence was a common occurrence, but this was the last time that Michael would see his loving sister. Blue was known to be extremely talented and made videos of herself doing her hair and makeup. She was even planning on attending cosmetology school and pursuing a career on this path. She would also often attend parties and get-togethers, even though this wasn't really her scene. By the time she turned 19, she was completely independent and was known to go a few days without directly seeing family members. During this year, though, according to a cousin, she'd been acting strangely. When called out on it, she would quickly snap out of it and return to her usual self. This, of course, began to concern family members. On the 5th of July, Blue headed to her mother Tamara's home to return a cell phone, which was incredibly odd for her to do. According to the family members, she would often be reluctant to return the device, but this time she wasn't. The weeks trotted on, and then family members began noticing that no one had seen her in a while, so they began looking for her. After asking around, they learned that she'd been seen around 4 p.m. on the 23rd or 25th of July of that year. Blue bounced her way down Buena Vista Drive in Billings, Montana, happy as usual. She was often active on her social media accounts, but something seemed off that day. Her next post would only come hours after she was last seen. Just before midnight, Blue uploaded a cryptic post and was never seen or heard from again. There have been no posts made to her social media accounts since. Rumors soon began to flood in, one of which stated that she'd recently gotten into a relationship with an unknown man. For the next few days, worried friends and family scoured the streets and prompted door-to-door questioning, but to no avail. Tamara headed to the Yellowstone County Sheriff's Office on the 20th of August and reported her daughter missing. The police, though, didn't prompt an investigation immediately. The family were on their own. Paper flyers on street poles fluttered in the wind, and soon a tip came in, and this tip centered around a man who was living in Billings and had been accused of assault previously. But law enforcement refused to follow up on this tip, encouraging relatives to speak with him on their own. He denied knowing where she was, and it turned out that the initial tip came from this man's ex-girlfriend, who'd seen him stalking Blue while they were still together. Either this tip was the result of an angry girlfriend out of revenge, or she knows that her ex, who's believed to have a violent history, had something to do with the vanishing. This piece of information, though, went no further than this. No law enforcement official trained in interviewing potential suspects ever spoke to the man in question. And then the family received another tip. This time it was far more heartbreaking. One of Tamara's friends told her that they had seen Blue downtown. She'd been speaking with a group of men who were known to be involved in the human trafficking industry. Unfortunately, though, the family, who were investigating this entire ordeal by themselves, were unable to track any of the men down. The next lead in the case took a very long time to come through. This time, though, it came straight from law enforcement. They had somehow learned that a person had purchased a bus ticket for Colorado. This lead wasn't searched any further than this, but Tamara was stubborn and pressed on for them to find surveillance footage. Police again found that the lead was far too weak to even follow up on, so it again led them nowhere. Next on the list of suspects was an ex-boyfriend named Eric. Blue and Eric were known to have had a rocky relationship, but no formal complaints have confirmed any abuse patterns, so of course this wasn't investigated either. It's believed that Blue was involved with the Northern Cheyenne tribe, which encouraged members to head to Arizona, but they found nothing there. Any information regarding Shacaiah can be directed to the Yellowstone County Sheriff at 406-256-2929. Her sense of humor is what Rita, Janelle, Papakee's family remember the most. They would sit around the barbecue, which the whole family attended, laughing until their stomachs hurt. She was a fun person to be around. Rita would make sure that the whole family was taken care of, including her children, grandchildren, siblings, and other relatives. Those sounds of pure happiness, though, trailed off on the 16th of January in 2015. On this day, Iris Robert was in the car with her daughter, Rita, when she was asked to stop at the casino. Iris dropped the woman at the front and drove off again. This was a normal day, or so she thought. It was 1 p.m. in Iowa. Rita, a registered member of the Meskwaki tribe, was leaving the Meskwaki Bingo Casino Hotel. Then she dropped out of contact. On the odd occasion, she was known to head off on her own, but would usually stay in contact with her relatives. This time, though, there was nothing. After waiting a few days and making their inquiries, Rita's family headed to the Meskwaki Nation Police on the 18th of February. This was after the woman failed to pick up her paycheck. She was reported missing, which sparked an enduring mystery. This was another case where rumors of human trafficking began to take flight. Police were reassuring, believing that they would find answers soon. But days turned into weeks, weeks turned into months, and months to years. Rita Papakee remained missing. After the first few months in the disappearance, Iris heard no updates about her daughter. The FBI and DCI stepped in, and with this help, the search expanded. Despite federal and state intervention and additional resources, Rita remained missing. Her aunt began to fear the worst. The idea that her niece was gone began to sink in as she watched the tracker dogs, horses, and helicopters flood in. Police would then begin to suspect that she'd gone to Des Moines or perhaps the Cedar Rapids area, but no evidence alluded to this being the case. As the case grew colder and colder, police withdrew from ground searches, leaving the family to search on their own. In November of 2022, the BIA stepped in, and Rita's case was reopened. This renewed hope again ended the same way. In recent years, the indigenous communities have seen an increase in awareness. Activists and members of the community are ensuring that missing Native American people like Rita are not forgotten. 5 years later, in July of 2020, the reward offered for information leading to the discovery of the missing woman was increased to $75,000. Information leading to the whereabouts of Rita can be directed to the Meskwaki Tribal Police Department at 641-484-4844, the tip line at 641-484-5400, or Tama County Dispatch at 641-484-3760. Native American woman and Cherokee Nation member Kimberly Mullins is a mother of 4. In early June of 1998, the 33-year-old gave birth to her last daughter. At this time, she was living in Tulsa, Oklahoma, in the 2500 block of East 5th Street, with her husband and their children. Their relationship, though, was everything but sound. In the years leading up, Kim found herself trapped in a rocky relationship, which met its summit on the 25th of June of that year. That evening, according to a witness, a violent argument erupted in the household. This forced Kim to leave the house. She wasn't known to disappear, run off, or not contact her family. So when they hadn't heard from her, they began to investigate. The husband, Lee, told them of the argument and explained that she'd left him for another man, a claim that they found to be completely outrageous. 2 weeks prior, she'd given birth to her youngest daughter, whom she left behind along with her purse. These inconsistencies rang alarm bells in the family's ears, and they headed to the local police department. Kim was reported missing. It's uncertain to what extent the authorities investigated the case, if they had done so immediately or if they interviewed Lee. All that they knew was that Kim was gone, and under incredibly suspicious circumstances that placed Lee as the prime suspect. Lee is believed to be the last person to see the missing woman, with no witnesses, clues, or tips arising. It's noted that DNA is available for comparison, but to this day, Kim hasn't been located, and all 4 of her children continue to search for her. A Facebook page called Oklahoma Cold Cases, featuring Tim under the hashtag #SilenceIsBetrayal, was created. Any information about Kimberly can be directed to the Tulsa Police Department at 918-596-9143. It was the 13th of May, 2022, in Bearden, Oklahoma. It was a Friday afternoon when Cara Cox, a 41-year-old Native American woman and mother, was last seen. Just 2 days after that, she lost all contact with family and friends while she was near Twin Arrows Casino. She was gone in the blink of an eye. A week later, on the 20th of May, the woman's vehicle was discovered abandoned at Love's Travel Stop at the Seminole exit off I-40. Mindy Caudle, Cara's sister, joined the Facebook group titled Arizona Unsolved, Identified and Missing. And there, she added some pictures of her sister and detailed the circumstances of her disappearance. A truck driver, believed to be a companion, would later contact the family, stating that he'd actually given Cara a lift, dropping her off at a rest stop in Arizona. One detail would later change in this statement, with the location of the rest stop changing to California. The family grew increasingly concerned for Cara's well-being as the days trotted on. 2 days after Mindy made her Facebook post about the lifelong resident of Oklahoma, one social media user came through with a tip. This individual detailed that on the 3rd of June of that year, walking on the Joseph City back roads on the Westover Bridge around 17:30 that afternoon. She carried a brown bag and a blanket, looking tired and fatigued. They also stated that the woman had some tattoos. Mindy quickly responded to this tip, stating that Cara had a scorpion tattoo on the back of her neck and a Care Bear on her right shoulder. The sighting was confirmed to have been Cara Cox. Nearby, there was also a truck stop, which could have been where she was dropped off, and she was headed in the Holbrook direction. It was noted that a Greyhound shuttle would stop in the area, but it's unknown if she ever boarded it. After this sighting, though, the case went cold. It's thought that she may have accepted a ride to an unknown location, taking her further and further away from her hometown and her family. The exact extent of the investigation carried out by the police into the disappearance is unknown. Cara remains missing. She's said to be between 5'3" tall and 5'6" tall. She weighs between 100 and 160 pounds. At the time that Cara disappeared, she had straight brown hair that reached midway to her back. Any information can be submitted via text at 847-411 or call 833-560-2065. Seated side saddle on the porch rail in her peach-colored dress was 26-year-old Diane Lynn Medicine Horse, a young Native American mother. She looks toward the horizon, a point only known to her. She waits patiently for the shutter to click, with her daughter sitting on her lap. Little did she or anyone know that right after this picture was taken, she would disappear forever. This photo would follow Natasha Rondo for the rest of her life as the search for her mother presses on. It was on the 28th of September in 1981 when this picture was taken. Diane was last seen out in the front yard of Uncle Tim's house in Crow Agency, Montana, in the Crow Native American Reservation, where her daughter's father, Henry, was also staying at the time. She had arrived there to drop Natasha off for a visit with her father and uncle. She had another child, a son who lived in Glendale, Washington with his mother. And so Diane waved goodbye and drove the white car back onto the street, never to return to reclaim her daughter. The family, though, wasn't initially concerned. Diane, who had a traumatic childhood, was prone to never staying put for too long, a characteristic that would later play a part in the police investigation. It wasn't until a funeral for her mother that the family grew concerned. Sisters were unable to contact her, and no one had seen her for quite some time. She was reported missing on the 23rd of October in 1981, and the BIA came forward to investigate the matter. The missing person file, though, lacked the yellow documentation that alerted neighboring departments to the disappearance. It wasn't uncommon for missing person reports to be filed after a funeral took place, and the police would be made aware of the fact that Diane had a history of dropping out of sight. But missing a loved one's funeral within the Native American culture was extremely rare and incredibly alarming. Nathan would later come into possession of the police file as he continued to search for his mother, and revealed that agents had checked a rehab center in Glen Drive. They also followed a tip to North Dakota and a supposed lodge grass basement that turned out to be nothing more than a crawl space. All these tips that led nowhere also fueled the hope that Nathan and Natasha's mother was still alive, and that the peach dress porch photograph was more than just a picture on the wall. There was hope in not knowing for the family, and the search for Diane Medicine Horse pressed on. The FBI would later deny the children any information about the case, but this only forced them to carry out the hope that she was still around. They just didn't go anywhere. Little information has been publicized on Diane's case, but it remains ongoing and active. Nathan and Natasha continue to circulate information about her in hopes that answers will one day come knocking. As children, they were told that their mother had wandered too far from home and just hadn't made it back yet. According to the Sovereign Bodies Institute's database, there are currently 27 missing Native American women on the Crow Reservation, with Diane being one of them. Diane is recognized as part of the Crow tribe of Montana. The BIA Crow Agency Montana office is presently handling the case, and information can be directed to them at 406-638-2631. Ashley Elizabeth Rosales was another victim of a rough upbringing. She and her sister Amity were adopted by their aunt after a tragic event struck the family. Ashley attended Infinity High School, from which she graduated in 2008. She then decided to attend a cosmetology school at DeWolf, but she would never get to finish studying for her dream career. She enjoyed doing makeup and French braid hairstyles. She was a strong woman who had a high respect for everyone, especially herself. Belen, New Mexico, the same place where Tara Calico and Debbie Lansdale disappeared. It appeared that this was a hub for enigmatic vanishings. It was from this small town that Ashley would also go missing. In 2017, she was living with Amity and a few friends after her home had just burned down 2 years prior. On the 28th of August of that year, the two sisters got into an argument, prompting Ashley to leave the house without any means of contact. It's uncertain if she was alone or if she was accompanied by another housemate when she headed out. In September, she was due to be in court, where she'd be receiving custody of her 2 children, but she never made it there. Amity had last seen her sister on the day of the argument, and the last reported sighting of Ashley came on the 16th of September, when she was released from a Presbyterian hospital. Strangely, an official missing person report wasn't filed until the following year, on the 30th of January, when it was taken by Detective Rivera and reported by Ashley's niece, Megan Armijo. According to the report, the family tried to report the disappearance in September and October, but was unsuccessful both times. Detective Rivera also spoke with Mariah, Megan's sister, and 2 stories came up. First, according to Megan, Amity stated that she hadn't heard from her sibling and that she'd gone to Oklahoma with a friend named Kelly. They would be heading to a job together, but no one had clarified what this job was. According to Megan's report on what Amity said, the 2 women were sold into the human trafficking industry, but Kelly escaped. A man named Corey is also involved in the story and is seemingly related to Kelly. Megan allegedly contacted the Oklahoma State Police to follow up with the names and address, but when they investigated it, they found nothing out of the ordinary. According to the second story given by Mariah, Amity said that Ashley had caused a disturbance at her boyfriend's house and had then headed to Eric, Oklahoma with Kelly to do work. But this time, Kelly didn't like the work and returned home again. Police followed up with these 2 stories by heading over to Kelly and Corey's homes, but they weren't there, and any attempts to locate them were unsuccessful. The stories that both women told couldn't be confirmed. Ashley's family does not believe that she would have left without saying anything to them. She would never be gone for more than just a few days and would always be in contact with her relatives. Today, a Facebook page called Help Find Ashley Elizabeth Rosales continues to post updates, information, and pictures to keep the case in the public eye. Ashley is among the many Native American missing women whose cases remain unsolved. Ashley was last seen wearing a white or cream-colored shirt over an orange undershirt. She wore either dark blue or black leggings. This biracial Hispanic Native American woman has brown hair and brown eyes. She's known to be of Navajo descent. She has a circular scar on her back and a few tattoos. The tattoos include the name Ashley Rosales and a bunny under the center of her back. On her hip, she has a woman holding a dragon, the astrological sign for Cancer on her left hand, and another on her foot. Any information regarding the whereabouts of Ashley can be directed to the Belen Police Department at 506-966-2680. Betty Ann Claw was born on the 17th of July, 1946. She grew up on the Navajo Reservation and attended the Intermountain High School in Brigham City, Utah. On the 2nd of August in 1996, she was in Farmington, New Mexico, where she was attending a get-together for Thanksgiving. Family last saw her on this date, and she would never be heard from again. One of Betty's sisters reported her missing to the police department in December. Unfortunately, not much is known about her disappearance, or the circumstances leading up to it. The woman was 50 years old when she vanished, and would now be 78. The extent of the investigation isn't known, but in recent years, the San Juan County Sheriff's Office has rehashed this 1996 cold case. Detective Andrew Gilbert began reaching out to family members in 2018. 21 years later, in an effort to learn more about the case that had seemingly been ignored since 1996. Even with this newfound effort, though, the information remains the same. Family members last saw Betty Ann Claw in Farmington in August of 1996. No new leads have presented themselves, and the case remains unsolved. Betty's simply gone. The sheriff's office has posted pictures of the missing woman on their Facebook page in hopes that someone may come forward with any information. The post gained some attention, with social media users claiming to have known her. One commenter had even babysat her children. Some had pointed their finger at a man named Robert Fry, who was charged for first-degree homicide and was active in San Juan County around this time. Despite the numerous comments on this post, though, no new information that could answer for the disappearance has come up. At the time of her disappearance, Betty Ann Claw was 5 foot 6 inches tall and weighed around 140 pounds. She's known to wear prescription glasses and has a pin in both of her ankles and her thumb after a car accident severely damaged them. Betty may also use the first name Ina. Any information about this missing woman can be directed to the San Juan County Sheriff at 505-320-8369. Caucasian female, blonde hair, blue eyes. This is the description presented in the case of 39-year-old Star Gail Boomer. She's known to have a tattoo of a rose on her chest, a bear on her outer ankle, and a partial barbed wire tattoo. Her 25-year-old cold case began on the 23rd of February, 1999. Star had headed off to the 4900 block of Metropolitan Avenue in Kansas City, Kansas. She was going to Uncle Mike's bar, which is now called Nobody's Business. The bar was located near her residence. She headed there with her roommate, Carolyn Marshall. The two friends sat down at the bar, and a series of strange events followed shortly after. A male stranger walked up to the women and threw Star right off of her bar stool. They didn't know each other, and it appeared that there was no reason for this violent act. The strange man was believed to have a history of violent behavior towards women in particular, and had quite a criminal record. Star stood up and brushed the altercation off, insisting that she was fine, as her attacker was being forced out of the establishment. Once Carolyn had finished her beverage, she opted to leave and asked the bartender to keep an eye on her friend. Carolyn planned on returning later to pick her up. Later that day, she phoned the establishment, but was told that Star had already left, accompanied by two men. She left the area with $80 in her purse, and then she vanished. Carolyn waited 5 days, hoping that her roommate would turn up, but she never did. She then reported her missing to the local police department, and the investigation into the vanishing ensued immediately. Authorities headed to the 4900 block of Metropolitan Avenue and questioned witnesses. They explained that they'd seen the woman get knocked from her bar stool by a man who was involved in a previous altercation that same day. It was here that police found out that the man in question may have been a career criminal. He had, according to witnesses, not only knocked another patron from her chair, but also proceeded to assault her to the point that she lost consciousness. Authorities also found out that Star hadn't left the area with two men of her own free will, as Carolyn was told. Instead, she was dragged from the establishment by the two men, and she was never heard from again. In October of that year, two local men believed to be involved in the disappearance were brought in. William Eugene Spradlin and Robert Franklin Horn both have extensive criminal histories and have both been in prison. They were placed on trial for their involvement in Star's case, but the charges were dismissed when witnesses to the crime refused to testify. Adding even more mystery to the case is that one of the patrons at the bar was Sean Pernis. His wife, Renee, disappeared in 2009, and he was convicted of her homicide, despite no body ever being found. While he isn't considered a suspect in Starr's case, he was questioned by the police as a potential witness. Authorities began searching for the missing woman or her body. In recent years, new interest has been sparked, prompting investigators to rip up tiles and baseboards at the bar where Starr was last seen. A now empty plot in the vicinity of her residence has also been thoroughly searched. They're also attempting to locate another potential witness named Edward, who's not considered a suspect, but may have information of what happened that fateful day. Edward is known to frequent the Turner section of Kansas City, and may have worked in the area before moving out of the state. At the time of her disappearance, Starr Boomer was living in the 1700 block of South 49th Street. She was going through a divorce and was planning to move back to her parents' house. She dropped out of Turner High School and was studying for her GED certificate with dreams of becoming a florist. Starr left behind a son, and her case remains unsolved. Foul play is expected due to the circumstances leading up to the disappearance. She was last seen wearing a blue jacket, blue jeans, and sneakers. At the time of her disappearance, she was 5'4" and weighed around 140 pounds. The KBI is offering a $5,000 reward for information in Starr's case. Any information can be directed to the CUE Center for Missing Persons at 910-343-1131. Tracy Michelle Samuels, a 24-year-old mother of two, was living at the Cherry Hill apartment complex in Tulsa, Oklahoma, with her husband. It was the 17th of February 1993, 11 a.m., when she guided her daughter onto the school bus and dropped her son off with her parents in Jenks. She was on her way to an exciting job interview, but she never picked her children up from their locations and didn't return home that day. Her disappearance was immediately noted when her truck, a blue 1988 GMC extended cab pickup, was found the next evening around 10:30 p.m. parked at the complex in the 4800 block of South Jackson Avenue. Police prompted door-to-door inquiries and learned that one resident had seen a woman matching Tracy's description getting out of her car and into a white Chevrolet flatbed with an unknown male with brown hair, a mustache, and a baseball hat. The resident recalled that Tracy seemed reluctant to go with this unknown man, and the encounter appeared forceful. Tracy unfortunately never told anyone where or who the job interview was with. They didn't even know what the job entailed. According to some sources, she was also carrying a large sum of cash around with her that day, but the exact amount was never clarified. 3 days later, it was Tracy's daughter's birthday, and she had still not returned. It became clear that she'd not left out of her own accord, as she would never miss her children's birthdays. Whatever happened, it happened against her will. Tracy's parents described her as a responsible mother who would never leave her children behind. In 2012, the investigating agency, the Tulsa Police Department, as well as the FBI, received information that she may be buried on a property in Tulsa. But the property, where it is, who owns it, and why they thought she was buried there is unknown to this day. Authorities dug up the property for 3 days, but no trace of the missing person was ever found. Her case remains classified as endangered missing, and the investigation is ongoing. Tracy Samuels is a Caucasian woman who's a member of the Cherokee Nation. She has blonde hair and blue eyes, and may wear clear contact lenses. She's said to have a scar on her abdomen and a small dark birthmark on her lower back. Information regarding the whereabouts of Tracy can be directed to the Glenpool Police Department at 918-322-8110 or the Tulsa Police Department at 918-596-9222. The BIA is also involved in the ongoing case and is actively seeking information. Haiti is a country that can be particularly dangerous for investigative journalists. This is especially the case in the capital of Port-au-Prince. The threats of violence and kidnapping didn't deter Vladimir Legagneur, a photojournalist working as a freelancer at the time of his disappearance, but who had previously worked for major news outlets in Haiti. The experience meant that he knew how dangerous his job could be. Armed groups were active in the capital. In particular, a federation of 9 powerful gangs called G9 posed a serious threat to any journalists working in the area. So when Vladimir told his wife, Florette, that he was going to work on a risky project, they devised a system to make sure that he was as safe as possible. Florette didn't know exactly what the project was, But given the neighborhood was described as ground zero for gang violence, it was obvious he was at risk of becoming a missing person, or even worse. Florette would call Vladimir every 2 hours to check that he was okay. Vladimir left his home early in the morning of March 14th. Throughout the morning, everything went smoothly. Florette called Vladimir at 12 p.m. Everything seemed fine, but Vladimir couldn't talk much and said he was busy. This was the last time anyone spoke to Vladimir before he became a missing person. 2 hours passed and Florette called again, but Vladimir didn't pick up. Florette knew something was wrong when Vladimir didn't come home that evening. She'd been trying to get a hold of him all day, but it was no use. She spent the next 2 days searching hospitals, police stations, and the morgue before reporting Vladimir as a missing person on March 16th. There are countless rumors about what happened the day Vladimir disappeared. According to some reports, there was fighting between 2 gangs that day. One person passed away, but they were identified as a gang member. Other reports claimed it was quiet the day Vladimir vanished. The police investigation into this missing person case has been limited. A number of people were arrested early on, including one person who had Vladimir's phone, but police claim there's no evidence that he passed away. Human remains were also discovered near where Vladimir was last seen, but the results of a DNA test have never been revealed. International organizations have called for more work to be done to solve this missing person case and bring closure to Vladimir's friends and family. Carrie O'Brien Krueger wasn't working as a journalist when she mysteriously disappeared, but it might have been her past journalism that inspired her vanishing. The disappearance took place in December of 1989. Carrie was at home in Burlington, Wisconsin, with her husband and daughter when she received a phone call on the evening of December 11th. She told her husband, Tracy, that she needed to replace a coworker on a business trip. She was leaving early the next morning for a flight to Wyoming, where there was a trade show and she needed to attend. Her car wasn't working, so another coworker was also going on the trip and was going to take her to the airport. Carrie left at about 4:30 a.m. on June 13th. A neighbor was awoken by the sound of a car outside and went to the window to see what was going on. There was a strange black car out front. According to some sources, the neighbor spotted an unidentified man in the car, but went back to bed before anybody else got in. In other sources, the neighbor couldn't see the driver but did see Carrie get into the car. The next morning, the company Carrie worked for contacted Tracy to ask where she was. There was no business trip and they had no idea where Carrie was. At first, Tracy wasn't too worried, but the next day, when he still hadn't heard from Carrie, he contacted her parents and she was finally reported missing. At first, police thought Carrie had intentionally disappeared, but when she hadn't contacted her daughter at Christmas, they began to suspect that foul play was involved in this unsolved case. Tracy became the prime suspect for many, but police never named him as one. It wasn't the first time Tracy had told family and friends that Carrie had been on a non-existent work trip. Carrie would always be surprised whenever anybody asked about the trips. Tracy never revealed why he made up these lies. Another strange aspect of the case is that Carrie had been suffering from a mysterious illness for months before she disappeared. The illness resulted in stomach pain, nausea, and weight loss. Some believe Carrie had been poisoned, though no evidence of this has been found. Carrie's family also accused Tracy of not helping search for her. He actually took down missing person flyers, but said that it was so his daughter didn't see them. Tracy took a polygraph test, but the results were inconclusive. He agreed to take another one, but fell ill before he could. He suffered a stroke which caused memory loss. Tracy has no memory of his wife's disappearance. Carrie's daughter now believes her mother ran away. During her earlier journalist career, she'd written an article about assuming a new identity. This theory suggests that this was where Carrie got the idea to start a new life. If still alive today, she would be 64 years old, and anyone with information in this case is asked to contact the Burlington Police Department at 262-763-2666. 2920. The disappearance of newspaper reporter Jody Roberts is a strange missing person case which left many with unanswered questions. Jody was 27 years old when she vanished without a trace in May of 1985. She was working as a reporter in Tacoma, Washington at the time. Her career had her covering some dark stories, including corruption in the local government and the Green River serial killer. So when Jody didn't show up for an assignment on May 20th, many feared her work might have caught up with her. Jody's parents and siblings began the search for their missing loved one. Her car was located in a parking garage near the newspaper office. Nobody had seen anything out of the ordinary, but it was possible she could have been grabbed on her way to her vehicle. Not everyone was convinced foul play was involved, though. Jody had emptied her bank account just before she vanished, and she had recently taken her pet cat to the Humane Society. It looked like she'd disappeared to start a new life. The case quickly went cold, but in 1997, police took another look at the case. Jody's photo was published in local newspapers. To the surprise of investigators, they received a tip from someone who knew the missing person. He knew her as Jane D., a woman living in Alaska. 12 years earlier, Jane had wandered into a shopping mall with no memory of who she was. Photos were published in the local newspapers, but Jane wasn't recognized by anybody. Jane started her life again studying Russian at university before moving to Alaska. She was working as a waitress when she met Dan Williams, a fisherman. They later married and had 4 daughters together before she was contacted by investigators searching for Jody. Jody's family recognized Jane as their missing loved one. Jane, or Jody, still didn't remember her past but was keen to get to know her family again. Some people doubt Jody's amnesia story and believe there are still unanswered questions in this case. The missing person case is officially solved. Azory Gwanda was an experienced and award-winning investigative journalist in Tanzania when he vanished without a trace in 2017. Azory had grown up in a village in northwestern Tanzania but moved around the country to pursue his journalism career. He wanted to make a difference for his community and worked for various outlets. Azory was tackling an extremely dark story. The region of Rufiji was the scene of more than 40 disappearances and passings over a 2-year period. The victims included everyone from ordinary citizens to police officers, and even government officials. Police were under extreme pressure to solve the crimes. Every now and again, high-ranking government officials would claim the criminals responsible for the crime would be captured soon, but those arrests never came. Police also claimed the mysterious disappearances were caused by foreign forces trying to cause disturbances in the area. Altogether, it made for a dangerous environment for Azory to work in, but he was committed to reporting on the mysterious disappearances. His co-workers praised his courage for trying to get to the bottom of the unsolved cases. November 21st, 2017 was the last time Anna Pannoni saw her husband. She was working at a farm near their home when Azory pulled up in a white Toyota Land Cruiser. There were 4 other men in the car who she didn't recognize. Azory asked for the keys to their home, and he said that he had a work-related emergency and was going on a trip. He promised he would be back the following evening. Anna handed over the keys, but it was obvious something was wrong. When she returned home that night, she discovered the house had been ransacked and Azory's phone was turned off. When he didn't return the next day, he was reported as a missing person. Most suspect his disappearance was caused by his investigative journalism work. Even though Azory was one of countless people to have vanished, it didn't seem like a coincidence, especially given the state of his home. But beyond that, the missing case remains unsolved. There were even rumors that security agents were responsible for the disappearance. Family and campaigners have criticized the government's response to the disappearance as well. In 2019, the Tanzanian foreign minister claimed Azory had passed away, but he later retracted his statement. Azory's missing person case, like the cases he covered, remains unsolved. Noriko Tsuhide is a Japanese journalist who's been missing since 1998. One theory about her disappearance surrounds investigative journalism work that she was doing before she vanished. Noriko was 24 years old when she disappeared. She worked for the community magazine Ise Shima and was working on a story about the Watakano Island. The island could be accessed through a short boat ride and had an extremely dark history. There were stories about people being kidnapped by the Japanese mob and forced to work on the island, and once there, they could not leave. How much research Noriko had done on the story is unknown, but the attention would definitely have been unwanted. Noriko was last seen on November 24th leaving her office. The next day, police noticed Noriko's car parked outside the building. It was illegally parked, which was very unlike Noriko. The car seat had also been pushed back further than she normally would have had it, and there was a cigarette butt on the floor, but Noriko didn't smoke. At first, police didn't think there was anything suspicious about her disappearance, but when she hadn't been found in a month, it seemed likely foul play was involved. Police discovered she had 4 calls from a man on the day that she disappeared. The man has not been named, and he spoke to police and claimed Noriko had previously interviewed him for a story. The man wanted to talk in person to clear up a misunderstanding. They'd met at a nearby parking lot, and after the meeting, which took a few hours, the man dropped Noriko off nearby. He claimed she was alive and well when he last saw her. The man had no alibi, but there was no evidence he had any involvement in the disappearance, and he was never arrested. The most common theory is that her Watakano Island investigation may have caused her disappearance. Another theory is that Noriko was kidnapped by North Korean agents. North Korea claims no abductions of Japanese citizens have taken place since 1985, but many don't find that believable. A port near where Noriko was last seen has been the last known location of others believed to be kidnapped by the North Korean government. Noriko's name was also mentioned by government officials as a possible abductee. In September of 2015, 38-year-old Kevin Lynn Mitchell of Anchorage, Alaska, had been dealing with anxiety from health issues. His family rallied around him in support. In 2015, there were over 2,295 missing person cases reported in the state. Just days before his 11th wedding anniversary, Kevin would join the list of missing people who have never been found in Alaska. On September 22, 2015, Kevin arrived at his home on Birch Road in O'Malley, swapped his work truck for his personal vehicle, a 2012 gray Toyota Tundra, and then set out again, only to mysteriously disappear. When evening came and Kevin was still nowhere to be found, his wife Nicole reported him as a missing person case. To this day, investigators are still unsure where Kevin went after he left his home to an unknown destination. Days later, Kevin's missing person case would take a mysterious turn, and it would turn out to be an unbelievable and strange moment in the investigation. The Anchorage police's first step was to search all of the properties that Kevin and his parents owned for evidence or even a missing body. Nicole told case investigators that Kevin was a keen outdoorsman, but that she feared that her husband may have gotten lost in the wilderness. Nicole also told the Anchorage Daily News that when Kevin disappeared from home, he left behind his wallet, ID, credit cards, and a turkey sandwich he had made for lunch. September 26th of 2015 brought a strange but true breakthrough to the unsolved case. Kevin's missing truck was found near Lake Girdwood, near mile marker 87.5 along the Seward Highway. The rough terrain here was especially treacherous for hikers. As media stories noted, Kevin's years of experience hiking in the woods meant he could survive outdoors longer than most, and so the search for what had happened to Kevin would continue over the next few days. Unbelievably, a severe change in weather brought the search and rescue mission to a sudden and unexpected ending, and the case would remain unsolved. Despite numerous searches by the Alaska State Troopers since then, no sign of Kevin has ever been found since he went missing in the woods. Given the vast landscape, the strange disappearance of Kevin Lynn Mitchell may never be solved. Kevin's friends and family believe he most likely perished after going into the wilderness on that day, but hope is not entirely missing from the family yet, and they desperately want his unsolved case to be solved years later. In his missing person report, Kevin Lynn Mitchell is described as a white male with brown hair, brown or blue eyes, 5'6" to 5'8", and about 170 pounds. Anyone with information to help explain what happened to Kevin after he mysteriously disappeared is asked to contact the Anchorage Police Department at 907-786-8900, quoting case number 1500-386-42. In 2021, 47-year-old Liliam Max was the owner of the Estetica Liliam Hair Salon in Cullman, Alabama. That same year, she would mysteriously disappear in what has become one of Alabama's strangest missing person cases in recent history. Investigators are currently still puzzled by Liliam's disappearance, and the true crime community finds the ending to her story particularly unbelievable. On May 2nd, 2021, Liliam boarded a bus in Birmingham, Alabama for Atlanta, Georgia. There she had told friends and family that she had an official hearing regarding a hearing about her immigration status. Before she went missing, Liliam borrowed $500 from people she knew, promising to pay it back upon her return. Liliam boarded the bus and subsequently vanished without a trace. When Liliam went missing from the hair salon that she owned, her friends and family became concerned. On May 7th, 5 days after her disappearance, Liliam's unexplained absence was reported to the Cullman police, who immediately opened a missing person investigation. In an unbelievable twist, case investigators discovered that there had been no scheduled hearing for Liliam on the day that she disappeared, leaving them to wonder the true story behind why she'd traveled to Atlanta, and if a possible crime story was the true reason for her departure. She left behind most of her personal belongings except for her cosmetology license. According to stories told by friends and family, Liliam had mysteriously canceled her phone plan just weeks before becoming a missing person and failed to pay her bills. The Cullman Police Department currently believes that Liliam is from Honduras and does not have legal citizenship. They also publicly stated that they believed Liliam Max is not her real name. Friends and family do not believe that she would voluntarily disappear, and her clients at the salon described her as a dependable and trustworthy person. Investigators believe that she vanished of her own accord, despite what her friends and family say is the true story. In her missing person report, Liliam Max is described as a Hispanic female with black hair and brown eyes, 5'3" to 5'5", and 170 to 190 pounds. Anyone with missing information on this unsolved mystery is asked to contact the Cullman City Police Department at 256-734-1434, quoting case number 210-5C0536. The mysterious disappearance of 29-year-old Kenneth James Williams Jr. occurred in Monaca, Pennsylvania on May 14, 2011. His mother would later tell investigators stories of how Kenneth had been acting weird and appeared to be very upset before disappearing. Exactly why, though, he didn't say. This unusual behavior would turn into one of the strangest missing person cases that baffled case experts are still trying to solve years later. After he went missing from his mother's house, Kevin's intended destination remains unknown. Friends and family were not alerted to his disappearance until the next day, May 15th. This is the same day that his black 2005 Ford 500 was found abandoned in the woods of West Virginia, just over 100 miles away from his home in Pennsylvania. As crime scene investigators examined the car, they discovered that its owner, Kenneth, had vanished without a trace. After attempts to contact him failed, he was reported as a missing person. Detectives began building a case that would never be solved for a missing person who would never be found. Kenneth was known to be lactose intolerant, but upon searching his car, the police found an empty milk carton. Unfortunately, the milk carton was never tested for DNA, and it was eventually thrown away by one of the police agencies involved in the search for Kenneth. Still, investigative experts were equally baffled by two other crime scene clues. One, the radio had also been tuned to a hip-hop station, whereas Kenneth preferred to listen to classical music. Two, there was evidence that someone else had driven Kenneth's car as the seat was pulled forward in a different position. Investigators also noted that the remote wilderness where Kenneth's car had been found was not usually traversed by foot, and that if he went missing in the woods, then it would have likely been by car. The strange missing person case has continued to baffle investigators for over 11 years, and they're no closer to discovering the true story. There have been many unexpected twists in Kenneth's unbelievable case, and his family wants to have some closure. Kenneth James Williams Jr. is described as an African-American male with black hair, brown eyes, 6 foot to 6'1", and 140 to 160 pounds. Anyone with information is asked to contact Detective Kim Clements of the Beaver County Detective Bureau at 724-773-8574, quoting case number 11-001668. At the time of her mysterious disappearance on August 28th of 1996, 26-year-old Carrie Culberson was desperately trying to break up with her obsessive boyfriend, Vince Doane. On that day, she went with her friends to a volleyball game and returned home at around 11:30 p.m. Around this time is when Carrie's neighbor saw her leaving her Blanchester, Ohio home in her red 1989 Honda CRX. She vanished into the night and has been missing ever since. Years later, Carrie's unsolved case would come to an unbelievable ending. After driving around town the next day looking for their daughter, they reported her missing to the Clifton County Sheriff's Office, and the search for what had happened to Carrie began. Vince Doane, Carrie's boyfriend, was questioned multiple times, and each time the events in his supposedly true story changed. At first, he denied ever seeing Carrie on the evening of August 28th into the 29th, but days later, he told investigators that the two had argued before Carrie left his house. Investigators doubted Vince's story was true, but did not have enough evidence to move forward with the crime. As the strange story goes, August of 1997 was when the unsolved case would come to a bizarre conclusion. Vince was arrested and charged with being involved in Carrie's disappearance after footprints were found on the bottom of a pond that had been drained during crime scene evidence gathering at his property. As a result, Vince Doane was charged with kidnapping and found guilty. Vince Doane maintains his innocence, but did some jailhouse admissions to a cellmate, including the fact that he had dreamt up to 100 ways to make Carrie disappear because she wanted to leave him. Clarissa Carrie Culberson is described in her missing person report as a white female with brown hair, brown eyes, 5'2" to 5'3", and 122 pounds. Anyone with information is asked to contact Lieutenant Brian Edwards of the Clifton County Sheriff's Office at 937-382-1611, quoting case number M280-806-141. On July 4th, 1982, 18-year-old Sherry Melissa Ealy had just graduated high school and was waiting for college to begin. She'd picked up a part-time job as a pizza delivery driver for a Domino's Pizza in Salem, Oregon, and she was living with her cousin. While making deliveries one night, Sherry would become a missing person, and her strange but true case continues to baffle people to this day. Before she mysteriously disappeared, Sherry's 4th of July celebrations were cut short when she was suddenly called into work. At 9:30 p.m., a delivery to an address on River Haven Drive came in, and Sherry went to her Ford Pinto with the order. At 10 p.m., a witness found Sherry's Ford Pinto abandoned with the engine still running, but the person driving was missing. Beside the car were scattered pizza boxes and Sherry's Domino's hat. Crime scene investigators noticed one of the pizza boxes had a tire track and a footprint on it. Just a day after Sherry vanished, an unidentified caller had called the Domino's and demanded a ransom for Sherry. This self-confessed kidnapper did not leave any details and never called the restaurant again. The Marion County Sheriff's Office began interviewing people who recalled seeing a strange lime green truck in the area at the time of Sherry's unsolved disappearance. There have been several people of interest in Sherry's case, including a man who owned a lime green truck. Just days after Sherry went missing, this person coincidentally painted his green truck brown. Despite this odd coincidence, investigators have never been able to uncover enough criminal evidence to implicate anyone in Sherry's case, which remains unsolved to this day. Sherry Melissa Ealy is described in her missing persons report as a white female with brown hair, blue eyes, 5'2" and 100 pounds. Sherry has TB tattooed between her left thumb and forefinger and has a scar on her eyebrow, a scar under her chin, and another on her back. Anyone with information on the mysterious disappearance of Sherry is asked to contact Detective Melissa Farron of the Marion County Sheriff's Office at 503-588-5094, quoting case number 8210070. For the past 11 years, the family of Anthony Stammers has been making appeals for information on his disappearance. When he left his family home in Colchester in 2012, it was as if he vanished into thin air. Since then, there's been little update on this strange missing person case. Anthony was a creative young man who liked writing and playing guitar. He would occasionally write music, and his mother would sit and listen to his new songs. He had previously suffered from depression, but it was a condition that he was managing. In spring of 2012, Anthony's grandfather Arthur passed away. It was a real blow to Anthony, who had been close with his grandfather, and it naturally took another blow to his mental health. According to his family, they were all going through the grief together. Anthony didn't appear to be at a point of crisis and had been making plans for the future. In particular, he planned to move to Bristol to live closer to his older brother. May 27th was the day before Anthony's funeral. Anthony's mother Julie was at home when Anthony left the house at 10 a.m. He was going to London to meet some friends, and he would be back the next day. Later that same day, he sent a text to his mother, asking her to make sure his black pants were ready for the funeral the next day. It seemed as if he had every intention of showing up to give the reading that he'd been planning to do. But the next day, there was no sign of Anthony. His parents couldn't get a hold of him, and they immediately knew something was wrong. It turned out that Anthony had never arrived to see his friends the day before either. The police were contacted, and early on in the investigation, they discovered Anthony used an ATM not far from his home. Not long after he left the house, he withdrew 140 pounds from a machine in Colchester. Unfortunately, there were no CCTV cameras at the site, but the police had no reason to believe it wasn't Anthony that had withdrawn the money. His bank account hasn't been touched since. The next few months were spent searching through CCTV footage from Colchester, and ground searches also took place, but no trace of him was ever found. Since then, the case has gone cold. Anthony's brother appeared on TV to raise awareness about the case, and the family has fundraised for the Missing People charity. Anthony was 27 years old when he disappeared. He was 5'10" tall, of a medium build with short dark brown hair. When he was last seen, he was wearing blue jeans and a blue red checked shirt, and was carrying a black satchel. He may have been wearing a black New York Yankees baseball hat and a beige jacket. Anyone with information on the case can contact the police on 101 with reference number 12001-452, or the Missing People charity at 116-000. Details are scarce in this strange missing person case, but the family of Alistair Blythe deserves answers as to what happened to him in 1988. Alistair was an ambulance driver working for the Scottish Ambulance Service at the time of his disappearance. He had been on the job for about 10 months, and according to a spokesperson for the service, his duties included transporting older people. There had apparently not been any issues during that time. On December 23rd, he joined his co-workers for a Christmas night out and was last seen at the City Hotel, a hotel and bar in Dunfermline. The bar is just a 15-minute walk from where Alistair lived with his parents on Appin Crescent. He was last seen leaving the bar at about 10:30 p.m., but no further details have been shared. It's not known if he left alone, if the group had plans to go elsewhere, or if Alistair had said he was going home. Alistair didn't arrive home though, and the police were contacted not long after. His parents spoke in appeals not long after his disappearance, asking him to come home. There was hope that he might have still been alive. Those appeals were never answered, and the case went on unsolved. Alistair's parents passed away without ever finding out what happened to him, but his aunt, Maura Brady, has continued to appeal for information. According to police, Alistair's missing person case is still open, but no closer to being solved than it was in 1988. His aunt urged anybody with information to speak up, as it seemed impossible that Alistair had vanished without anybody knowing anything. Normally, in cases where someone goes missing after a night out, it's often the case that the missing person had an accident, especially when bodies of water are nearby. But in Alistair's case, there were no significant bodies of water. If he had an accident, he would have been found early on in the investigation. So far, there appear to be no signs of foul play, other than the complete lack of evidence pointing to any other explanation. Alistair was described as being 5 foot 9 inches tall, of medium build with dark brown hair and blue eyes. Anyone with information should contact Police Scotland on 101. Andrew Capone disappeared on a night out with friends in 1998. He left behind 3 children, and his oldest daughter is still searching for answers. Andrew's family last saw him on October 2nd, 1998. He dropped his daughter off at the bus stop, drove his wife to work, then made his way to the family caravan. He planned to close up the caravan for the winter before going out with friends in Skegness. The next day, Andrew didn't show up to pick up his daughter from a friend's house. His family couldn't get a hold of him, and it soon became clear he was missing. Thankfully, in this strange missing person case, the police were able to get a hold of CCTV, which allowed them to piece together Andrew's final night. Andrew and 3 friends arrived at the Streets Complex nightclub, a club not far from the beach. They seemed to be having a good time before Andrew and one of the friends got into an argument. They all had a lot to drink and were stumbling around when they were kicked out of the club. Outside, CCTV images showed Andrew pushing one of his friends before he walked away with another. Later, cameras caught that friend stopping at a cash point to take out money, but Andrew carried on walking, apparently not noticing. The final CCTV image before Andrew disappeared was captured at about 1 a.m. on October 3rd. It showed him leaving the corner of Scarborough Avenue, never to be seen again. His journey had taken him south and slightly inland, but he still wasn't far from the beach. What happened next was a mystery. If Andrew doubled back on himself to try to find his friends, he wasn't caught on CCTV again. His friends initially joined Andrew's family in appeals to try to locate the missing man. They claimed they were too drunk to remember what had happened, but it's unlikely any would have had the answers that Capone family needs, given Andrew was alone when he was last seen. Other witnesses from the night came forward, including a taxi driver who had picked up one of Andrew's friends, but none were able to point the family any closer to an answer. Early in the investigation, there were some reported sightings in Scotland, but these proved to be false leads. More than 20 years later, there are still no answers to this strange case. Andrew is described as 6 foot 2 inches tall, with blonde hair and blue eyes. He had several tattoos and was missing the middle finger on his left hand. Anyone with information can contact missing people on 116-000 or Crime Stoppers on 0800-555-111. Tiara Williams was planning for the future when she disappeared without a trace in January of 2016. What should have been an exciting time for the young woman turned into 7 years of mystery for her family, who are still looking for answers. Tiara was a 19-year-old woman living in Greensboro, North Carolina. She'd enrolled in Guilford Technical Community College for a course on childhood development and wanted to spend her life helping young children get the best start in life. At the time of her disappearance, she was living with her grandmother at the Stony Brook Apartments, as she didn't believe her grandmother should be living alone, but she still spent plenty of time with her mother, who lived in the same apartment complex. On January 7th, the day of her disappearance, she had been to college to make sure everything was in order before her course began. She then spent time with her mother, helping her take down Christmas decorations before her younger brother and her boyfriend Aaron arrived. At 8 p.m., Aaron, Tiara, and her younger brother went to Tiara's grandmother's home for dinner, but half an hour later, Tiara left the apartment again. She said she was going to meet a friend named Travis, who lived in the same apartment complex. It wasn't a name any of Tiara's loved ones knew, but they trusted her judgment. She was supposed to be home in an hour, but Tiara never returned. Aaron tried calling Tiara that night when she didn't come back, but his calls went straight to voicemail. The next day, he discovered she hadn't returned to her home that night at all. Tiara's mother and grandmother also couldn't get through to her phone. The GPS on her phone showed that it was still in or near the apartment complex when it had been switched off the night before. Tiara's mother, Danielle, began to believe Travis may not have existed. She discovered that her daughter had been out with one of her ex-boyfriends, and she believed that was who Tiara had been with the night that she vanished. It was a hunch that would turn out to be true. The ex-boyfriend hasn't been named, but the police spoke with him after Tiara was reported missing. At first, he denied speaking with her, but eventually confessed. He said that they had met up the night Tiara vanished and spent 20 or 30 minutes in his car talking. He last saw her walking back towards her grandmother's house. Police found no evidence of foul play from this ex-boyfriend, but he remains a person of interest. Over the years, many tips have been called in. Some include locations of a body, while others claim Tiara is still alive, but being held against her will. None of the tips have turned up any clues about Tiara's disappearance, and the case remains unsolved. Tiara was 5 foot 5 inches and weighed 120 pounds when she vanished. She had brown hair and brown eyes, and a nickel-sized burn scar on her right wrist. There's a $10,000 reward for information leading to Tiara's return. Anyone with information can contact Greensboro Police Department at 336-373-2222 or Crime Stoppers at 336-373-1000. Kevin Winters was described as a free-spirited person who had moved to Maui, Hawaii on a whim 14 years before he vanished without a trace. Nobody knew of anybody who would want to harm him, or any reason why he would want to disappear. But he did just that in September of 2021, and hasn't been seen or heard from since. Kevin was 51 at the time of his disappearance. He grew up in Michigan as one of 4 siblings. When he was a teenager, he had gotten into a dirt bike accident that left him with one leg shorter than the other. In 2007, Kevin left Michigan with just a single bag to visit Maui. His family believed he would only be there for about a month, but Kevin fell in love with the island and decided to stay. He lived a simple life, working at the North Shore Hostel in exchange for his room. His mother would also send him money every month or so he could survive. By all accounts, Kevin was someone who got along with everyone. He didn't have a criminal record and didn't use illegal substances. He drank but didn't have a drinking problem. But at the end of August of 2021, something very out of character happened. He was apparently caught stealing a coworker's phone that was left out in the communal area. He was fired and given a week to move out. On September 1st, he left the hostel for the final time. The next day, Kevin spoke with his mother, Maxine, on the phone. It was something he did almost every night, and nothing seemed unusual to Maxine. The conversation was short and sweet, according to his mother. It would be the last time she heard from him. A few days passed, and there was no call from Kevin. He didn't respond when Maxine answered, and no other family members were able to get in contact with him. According to Kevin's family, they called Maui Police Department on September 8th, though a report wasn't officially filed until September 19th. After he was reported missing, Kevin's family was able to get a hold of his bank records. It's not clear where he spent the night after leaving the hostel, but his family believed that he spent the night in a storage unit that he rented. The next record of him was at the Maui Brewing Company at about 8:40 p.m. This was about an hour away from Kevin's storage unit, and he would have had to have gotten there on public transit as he didn't have a working vehicle. At 9:45 p.m., Kevin was spotted on CCTV, depositing a check at an ATM at the First Hawaiian Bank near the brewery. His family found this extremely strange. Even though Maxine would send him money regularly, there was apparently no evidence that he deposited the money into his account very often. The next day, he was caught on CCTV at the same ATM, depositing another check. He was wearing the same clothes. This would be the last known trace of Kevin. Nobody in Maui has seen or heard from Kevin since his disappearance, and his family doesn't believe that he would willingly disappear. He also left $1,200 in his bank account and didn't collect his last paycheck. Kevin is described as a white male with brown hair and blue eyes. He was 5'7" and weighed 155 pounds when he vanished. His right leg is shorter than his left, and he would normally wear black shoes with lifts to try to ease the pain in his hip that this caused. A $2,000 reward is offered for any information leading to Kevin. Information can be passed on to the Maui County Police Department at 808-244-6400. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked this video, be sure to hit that like button. Also, don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell to keep up to date with all of our future uploads. But my name is Ty Knotts, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.